Welcome to Top Knot Education, where you get a chapter summary of a classic novel in less time than it takes you to walk to class. Today we'll be talking about Catcher in the Rye. Congratulations, you've made it to chapter 16. It begins with more thoughts on the nuns and more dark comedy. Holden imagines what would happen if Sally Hayes' crazy mother had to do what the nuns did in dressing in simple clothes and collecting money for the poor. He says she'd quit doing it in, quote, about an hour, unless, quote, everybody kissed her ass for her when they made a contribution. Salinger is generally sympathetic to the upper class. He's one of them, and he understands that money doesn't cure all your problems. Still, this description is a searing satire of the phony behaviors of mid-20th century American upper class. Good thing that's all changed. Holden's waiting for his date with Sally to start, and he does some shopping. He buys an album for Phoebe called Little Shirley Beans. He explains that he likes Estelle Fletcher's version the best because it sounds more authentic and soulful. A white girl could never sing the song like old Estelle Fletcher, he explains. An important thing happens next. He spots a poor family walking home from church. The parents are ahead and the kid is behind, happily singing a song. Here's the quote. "The kid was swell. He was walking in the street instead of on the sidewalk, but right next to the curb. He was making out like he was walking a very straight line the way kids do, and the whole time he kept singing and humming. I got up closer so I could hear what he was singing. He was singing that song, If a Body Catch a Body Coming Through the Rye. He had a pretty little voice too. He was just singing for the hell of it, you could tell. The car zoomed by, brakes screeched all over the place. His parents paid no attention to him, and he kept on walking next to the curb and singing, If a Body Catch a Body Coming Through the Rye. It made me feel better. It made me feel not so depressed anymore." It would take a long time to properly unpack this quote, but I'll try and do it as quick as possible. The song is taking a first stab at establishing the novel's obscure title, or at least the portion about rye. Secondly, the kid is in danger. His parents aren't paying attention to him, and he's near a busy street with cars whizzing by, but he's not scared. Not only is he not scared, he's full of a joy for life, singing a song happily. Holden appreciates this kid's childlike innocence and that it's still intact. Despite being poor and religious, the boy is a representation of how Holden felt before Allie's death. The boy still has the happiness that Holden has lost. Holden is generous enough of spirit that he's not envious of the boy's joy. It actually lifts his own depression for a while. Holden still has time, so he wanders around the park casually looking for his sister. He runs into a girl Phoebe's age and asks if she knows Phoebe. She does. The girl explains Phoebe is probably at the museum with her class. Phoebe is not in the museum. It's a Sunday. But the mention allows Holden to think about the museum for a while. It becomes a very important metaphor, but it's so well hidden, even your teacher probably won't recognize it. Holden begins to recollect all the things he's seen in the museum, and those things are actually matching up metaphorically with previous chapters in Catcher in the Rye. He first tells us about this wax statue of a Native American woman who is bending over starting a fire. If you sneak a glance, you can see her bosom down her shirt. This represents Holden's desire to learn more about a woman's body. It's the Monsieur Blanchard chapter. Next, there's Eskimo ice fishing. The Eskimo has cut a hole in the ice and has dropped a pole through. This represents Holden's lack of knowledge about the fish in Central Park. Remember, old Horowitz claimed that the lake froze solid in the winter. But the museum has real knowledge. The fish live underneath the ice, otherwise how could the Eskimo be fishing for them? Then we get the biggest mystery of all solved. Where do the ducks go? Salinger says it 3 times to ensure we don't miss it. Here's the quote. "There was even more upstairs, with deer inside them drinking at watering holes and birds flying south for the winter. The birds nearest you were all stuffed and hung up on wires, and the ones in the back were just painted on the wall, but they all looked like they were really flying south. And if you bent your head down and sort of looked at them upside down, they looked in an even bigger hurry to fly south." Holden knows what happens to the ducks in Central Park. He's known all along they fly south. He just refuses to allow himself to accept his own knowledge. He's still equating information with adulthood, and adulthood with phoniness and death. He wants to be the boy singing in the street, oblivious to everything. However, you can't conquer death, or knowledge, or adulthood, just by ignoring it. We the reader know that if Holden would just trust his own knowledge, he would have a better chance at being happy. According to Holden, the best part of the museum is that nothing ever changes. Everything is wax, it can't die. It can't grow up and be injected with a ton of confusing hormones. In a complicated way, the museum represents a perfect place for Holden. It's safe and unchanging and untouched by death and loss and grief. Still, as he reaches the museum door, he backs away and won't go in. The reader is anxious to know if the knowledge in the museum will help Holden grow wise, which is a good thing, or if he will use it in its static nature to never grow up, which is a bad thing. Salinger is going to answer this question, but not until Holden returns to the museum at the climax of the novel in chapter 25. Salinger is just setting up all associated themes in this chapter. The Date with Sally is next, but in the meantime, get to class.